The Giant Acorn by Tanya Humphreys. Milla shuddered as she clung to the cattail overhanging the river. She was a rabbit and could swim if she wanted to, but she was frightened of what lurked just under the surface. Vlad the Chomper floated as still as a bumpy green log. Only his bulbous, lichen-colored eyes glared upwards at her. She knew that under the water his 100 gnarly pointed teeth stuck out from his long, grinning, alligator snout. Milla's long back feet scrambled against the grassy bank, found hold, and propelled her upwards. She sputtered with fury at her nemesis, Inessa. Milla was pale tawny beige in color, her coat thick and tufted like mange in its in-between stage, that of the freezing snowy winter and the yet-to-come warm spring sunshine. Inessa's coat was black as coal. The same thick tufts were annoyingly pretty on her. Old Vlad was just licking his chops there. Inessa sat up on her back feet and gloated. You lose again. They'd been racing, from Boris the owl's tall green pine to the top of the bank where it was sandy, and skidding to a stop was easily accomplished. This day, Inessa had skidded in first, sending a hail of pebbles into the still water by the shore, teasing Vlad awake. Milla skidded in second, tripped over her own foot, and flew out over the bank. She'd been lucky to catch a cattail instead of a reed. The fat brown head had halted her locomotion, whereas a reed offered no such break. She shuddered again. She always lost the races. She'd been born with extra long feet that made her clumsy. Milla shook her furiously like a big pale pom-pom bearing long sharp front teeth. I'll beat you another way. She hopped to Inessa, stood on her back feet, and swiped a paw at her enemy's eyes. Inessa hissed and ducked, then pounced at Milla's legs, taking them both to the ground. They rolled like a fluffy yin-yang ball. Stop that foolishness right this instant. It was Milla's mother. Her white fur raised along her back in anger. Inessa's mother joined her and added, You two should be friends. Oh, how it saddens me to see you two squabble so. Milla and Inessa scrambled to their feet. Milla indignantly said, Squabble, babies squabble, she nearly killed me. Inessa said, Pa, I didn't even touch you, you tripped over your own. Quiet, Milla's mother screeched. Inessa's mother said, We're too busy to babysit you today. The two young rabbits growled. You two will do all the preparations for this afternoon's fair feast, sweep the yard, reveal the crocuses. Crocuses were the first spring flowers to emerge from the frozen earth. They were covered by the fallen maple and dogwood leaves. It was the rabbits' responsibility to uncover them the morning of the spring solstice fair and serve the dishes. The dishes were all variety of fresh young root vegetables and earthy spongy mushrooms. Mom, but that'll take all day, said Inessa. Milla concurred. Yeah, we haven't even found our acorns yet. Inessa's mother said, Well, you should have thought of that before your morning's mischief. Working together today will be good for you both. Milla and Inessa cringed as their mothers left to prepare the dishes. They huffed off to opposite sides of the meadow and unburdened the crocuses as quickly as they could. They swept the meadow clean of winter debris. When they were done, the meadow was a carpet of soft yellow grass surrounded by hundreds of hardy little flowers that resembled miniature tulips in every shade of purple, pink, and golden yellow. They had only 2 hours to find the prize-winning acorn for the biggest acorn challenge, the prize being a basket full of nuts and dried berries, enough to last an entire rabbit family the coming year. Inessa had won the year before. Her acorn was as big as her head, while Milla's had been only the size of her paw. Inessa had laughed at her and teased her for being so slow for a rabbit, making fun of her giant, ungainly back feet. She had been able to run farther along the river's sunnier side where the acorns grew fatter. Inessa took off towards the little cove where she'd found last year's prize winner. Milla tried to keep up but soon fell far behind. She huffed out of breath as she watched Inessa's fluffy black tail vanish in the tall reeds along the riverbank. She stopped at an oak and peered up into the sparse brown branches. Amongst the budding new leaves, a fat acorn hung like an ornament on a Christmas tree. Rabbits can climb trees. However, Milla, like all the others of her breed, was born with acrophobia, a fear of heights. As she eyed the fat acorn, she thought, "It is pretty big. But will it be big enough? Is it worth the climb?" She shivered. "It's so high up." A sudden crepitation of the branches startled her. Dead brown leaves crinkled and showered her upturned face. She shook them off and opened her eyes. The acorn was gone. An old gray squirrel was pocketing the acorn into his stretchy cheeks. Milla's anger dissolved as she observed the squirrel's winter skinny body. "I won't hesitate to climb the next time. Besides, if it fit in a squirrel's cheek, it certainly wasn't big enough to win." "Yo, Mr. Squirrel." The squirrel stopped his ascent, turned, and looked down. His cheek skin stretched taut like a huge fat tumor. "From up there so high, can you see which way that black rabbit went?" He looked up, stretching his neck through the prickly new jade-green leaves. He said, and pointed north and up the river. "Thanks." Milla headed that way. Meanwhile, Inessa found the cove she'd been looking for. It was sandy and sunny, and there were grand, gnarled oaks along its edge. "There," she thought as she spotted the tree that had offered the award-winning nut the year before. I'm not seeing any." "Psst, hey lil bun-buns." The voice was low and gravelly and spooky. Inessa turned in alarm. Her long ears stood straight up and rotated like radar dishes. The voice said, "Down here by Z Vader." Inessa crept to the water's edge. Vlad the Chomper, his evil grin fully visible above the gently rippling water, and, oh my, how long his body was. He was ginormous. "Oh, lil bun-buns, I'm no threat to you. I'm so big I move very slow." "You are so much quicker than I." "You lie, I've seen you chomp a deer, a big deer." "Z deer was very foolish to come into river. I am slow on land is what I meant to say." In any case, I'm not coming any closer." Vale, that's a shame. There is no larger acorn in all the oaks in Z-land than that one's ear." Vlad gestured with his long mouth overflowing with teeth towards the oak tree closest to the shore. Inessa crept closer to the tree and found that although it was far enough from the river's bank, easy enough to bound out of Vlad's chomp, its largest branch cantilevered out over the river. At the end of the long branch was the nut of all nuts. It appeared as large as the nuts of fantasy stories her parents told her at bedtime. Those nuts were called cocoa nuts. This acorn would be one the bunnies would talk of for generations, for eons, till the end of time itself. Her eyes grew huge and comically round, the whites showing in stark contrast in her black fur face. From the bushes she had hidden in came Milla's snicker. "Tee-hee-hee." Inessa looked from her nemesis to the acorn and back. Milla saw where she was looking. Her eyes grew just as round when she spied the giant acorn. Both rabbits scrambled up the tree, Inessa in the lead, Vlad forgotten. Milla made it to the branch 5 feet under the acorn. The only way to snatch it would be to jump. Inessa crept along the acorn's branch towards the acorn that was now swinging from side to side like a heavy, bottom-pointed pendulum. Milla said softly, No, it's going to fall." Inessa panicked at the thought and sped up her pace, causing the branch to droop and rock. She lost her footing and in a split second found herself hanging over the river with only her front paws wrapped around the branch. The acorn tauntingly dangled inches from her nose. Milla gasped and held her breath. She thought she'd be elated at the thought of her enemy falling into Vlad's gaping mouth. Oh, how much easier my life would be. She looked down at the gator. His mouth was open in an impossibly wide V shape. His sharp teeth were shiny with spittle, and his fat pink tongue undulated like an alien creature's embryo sac curling and uncurling. Disgusting. In her mind, she saw blood and guts and black for wet and ugly. In her mind, she heard bones snapping like the 4th of July explosions the humans in the village were so entertained by. Her thoughts scared her in the same way the fireworks did in real life. All I have to do is leap straight up and grab the acorn. The branch would shake and Inessa will fall. Easier thought than done. She realized how petty all their fights had been as she heard Inessa's frightened mewling and the cries pierced her heart. Inessa's left paw cramped, and she screamed. Mila was surprised to hear herself scream along with her. She's going to fall for sure. Mila had a plan. Without another thought, she leapt straight up and grabbed the nut. She landed squarely on her big back feet with the acorn clutched to her chest. The branch above her surged and Inessa was flung towards the river. Vlad positioned himself lightning fast to where Inessa was falling. Mila flung the enormous net into the tooth-lined jaws. The nut wedged tightly in the jaws like a bowling ball in a steel trap. Inessa bounced off Vlad's nose, splashed into the water, and swam swiftly towards the shore. By the time she reached it, Mila was there to help pull her out. The bunnies scrambled up the bank. They watched in amazement and trembled with shock as Vlad's entire muscular body writhed from side to side as he tried to dislodge the nut. Not only was it wedged in tight, but his teeth were sunk into the nut's thick outer shell. As the rabbit friends hopped through the oaks and into the forest, they heard a resounding crrrrack. As the nut broke in two, the rabbit children gathered around the nuts on display. The prize, winning acorn, belonged to wee brown Rudy, was slightly smaller than Mila's head. Mila and Inessa cleaned up the after-feast mess and congratulated Rudy on his win. He said to Inessa, "I didn't think any of us had a chance against you again this year." The other children rabbits joined in. Yeah, what happened?" Inessa said. "This year, I received a much more valuable gift than a basket of nuts and fruits." Mila added, "As did I." A metaphor by Nolan Pieper. Leaves whisked by in a crescendo, swirling and dancing through the cool evening air. Far removed from any city or town sits a train station. This is the station at the end of the line. Countless tracks lead into its terminals, and only one leads out. No one knows how to get there or even how they got there, but everyone ends up there. The platform is empty except for a small boy sitting on a bench accompanied only by the dancing leaves. He is counting the bricks, one by one, that are interwoven amongst the platform. The leaves whirl around his ankles and tickle his calves. The boy giggles and smiles with the sincerity that only an innocent child can espouse. No one is around to hear it, but it brings life to the deadness surrounding the train station, as if the leaves can understand him. The boy asks if they know when the next train will arrive. The leaves begin to waltz down the platform as if to invite the young boy to join in their dance. The boy hops off the wooden bench with delight and hurries after the leaves as fast as his wee legs allow. He pitter-patters along, in awe of the train station, as if he is taking it in again for the first time. He jumps from brick to brick like a frog jumping between lily pads. The boy doesn't remember how long he has been at the station. It could be minutes, hours, days, or months. The boy is unbothered. He used to dread and worry about being left on the platform, but now he finds joy. The boy loves welcoming travelers from incoming trains. He guides them along the immaculate brickwork of the platform, up the stairs, and into the glowing lantern of the station before they are sent off on their final ride. Countless trains in and only one train out for the station at the end of the line. A distant whistle blares, and a plume of smoke can be seen far down the railway as a new train is about to enter the station. As the train approaches, the station seems to come to life. The lights illumine it with a comforting glow like a hug from a lifelong friend. The station atop the steps begins revolving its doors, and a clock chimes from far away. The leaves become a vibrant palette of autumn dancing about, creating a mosaic of fall colors. It is signaling an end and a beginning. The boy runs around, arms stretched wide, pretending to fly like an airplane as the train hums into the station, letting out a final hiss to announce the end of its journey. The doors slide open like velvet curtains on a Broadway stage, and the ticket masters emerge from every door in a synchronized fashion, from the caboose to the engine. Dressed in red and black with shiny golden buttons glistening in the station lamps, they simultaneously check their pocket watches to confirm they are right on schedule. Then, one by one, passengers of all shapes and sizes, from people to pets, begin to exit the train. The pets are the boy's favorite part. Whenever he can sneak in a quick scratch behind a dog's ear or under a cat's chin, the boy waves and smiles at the passengers as they disembark from the train. The passengers reflect the boy's happiness as they all funnel towards the station with the revolving doors at the top of the steps. Without direction, the passengers all know where they need to go. In no rush, in an orderly fashion, they enter the station, tickets in hand, to take the final train to the stop at the end of the line. It is unclear to everyone how much time has passed since the train arrived. The passengers unloaded, and everyone entered the train station. The boy has returned to his seat on the wooden bench, swinging his feet into space as he awaits for one final passenger to exit the train. The boy waits and watches patiently as the hands of the train station clock make another round. He's lost count of how many revolutions they have made. Like a spinning top that never falters, the hands pass from 12 to 12. The boy is lost in hypnosis from the clock hands. The leaves stir at his feet again, alerting him that the final passenger is emerging from the train. A woman timidly pokes her head out of the third car from the caboose. She is wearing a beige sweater, blue jeans, and white sneakers. She is in her mid-40s with auburn hair. Her deep brown eyes glisten in the train station's glow, illuminating wisdom beyond her years. She looks from one end of the deserted platform to another, at a loss as to how she arrived here. The platform seems to extend indefinitely from either end as she gazes into the abyss, expecting to see something that will never be there. Finally, her gaze meets that of a small boy swinging his legs beneath him on a wooden bench, waving her down and smiling at her. She senses an air of familiarity with this boy, although she doesn't recognize him. She takes a shaky breath, gives her ticket to the ticket master for the third car from the caboose, and puts one foot in front of the other to exit the train. As soon as she has left the train, the ticket masters return to their cars. The train exudes a final choo-choo and rolls back in the direction it came. Step by step, she approaches the young boy on the wooden bench with his swinging legs. She doesn't know what else to do and sits next to the boy on his wooden bench. The boy just sits and smiles, looking off into the distance. The woman finally speaks. "Excuse me." Her voice is shaky and uncertain. "Young man, can you tell me where we are? I don't remember much besides waking up on an empty train car." The boy chuckles as wholesome as a homemade loaf of bread and replies, "There is always one, every train. There is always one, and it just so happens to be you. A person who feels resistant to the last stop of the line. That is okay though, you can take as much time as you need." "I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand," said the woman. "What do I need time for? What is this place? I don't think I can go back where I came from, but I don't know where to go from here." "Ah," said the boy in a ponderous state. "What you need time for, I cannot say. Most people just disembark from that train, enter the station at the top of those stairs, and take the last train. As to where this place is, I am not exactly sure. That is the right question to ask. The only way left for you to go is towards the station. In due time though, whenever you are ready. May I ask you something?" How do I appear to you? The woman looked more puzzled than before she had asked her questions. What do you mean, how do you appear? Don't you know what you look like, young man? The boy smiles again. Yes and no. I appear however you need me to appear. I have been many things: a man, a woman, a young girl, a dog, and a cat. But I am always here for those who need a little more time, right here, upon this bench amongst the dancing leaves. Do I look familiar to you? Any names or thoughts come to mind? The woman has more questions than answers, but is reconciling, calming, and relaxing. You do look familiar, like someone who may have been but never actually was. I feel like I need to walk up those steps, but I don't know what will happen after, and it frightens yet also excites me a little. I wish I had answers to more of my questions. Would you happen to know what I may be asking, young man? Also, may I call you something? Is Garth an okay name for you? Certainly, Garth works just fine, miss. The boy responded with an endearing smile that only a child can give. As to your questions, those are a tad tricky to answer. No one knows what happens, where you go, or what becomes of you. The boy gave another laugh. That is where the excitement and fright come hand in hand, I am afraid. You can no longer board the train you just departed from you, even if it did come back. But there is one more train through that station that can take you wherever you are meant to go. I know it is scary, and it goes to the end of this line, but who's to say there isn't more at the end destination, or even if there is an end destination? It could be a ride to oblivion, a ride back to the beginning, or anything in between. I can't give you the answers because I don't know them, and no one ever will, probably. Those answers await you, and only you, whenever you feel the time is right. Garth jumped from the bench and extended a hand. I can walk with you up the steps to the station if you like. The woman didn't understand what was happening, but she knew it didn't matter. The time she needed had passed, and she felt resolved about entering the station. She stood and grabbed Garth's hand with a smile that he returned in earnest. They both took one step after another up the stairs to the station. They could have climbed those stairs for a minute or years, but it didn't matter anymore. The woman and Garth were approaching the revolving doors. They heard a distant yet familiar train whistle somewhere on the other side. Sounds like your train is here, miss, Garth asked. Anything else I can do for you before we part ways? The woman wavered and thought, pondering as she began to enter the revolving doors. Are you sure you don't know where we are and what this is, Garth? Still a bit hung up on unanswerable questions. I see. Garth chuckled and responded. This is nothing more than a metaphor, miss. As to where we are, I think it is quite obvious. We are at a train station. A Quiet Night by Dable Champ. Quiet nights like this were pretty rare in this part of town. No sirens, no parties, no loud neighbors. For once Mike's apartment was as tranquil as a Buddhist temple. He couldn't wait to fall asleep. The bed, under all its blankets, looked warm and comfy in contrast to the icy chill of his bedroom. Perfect. But the peaceful night was interrupted with a bang. Complete terror overtook Mike. He had locked his bedroom door and stood so quiet that the only sound he made was the uncontrollable thump of his heart beating. Somehow, through the ruckus, he tried to decipher what was happening in his small apartment. From what he could hear, the front door had opened, and frantic footsteps traveled toward what seemed to be his bathroom. What followed next was pained retching, dry heaving, and a toilet flushing. If this was someone coming to steal from him, they were having a rough go at it. Besides, this stranger knew exactly where Mike's bathroom was. It had to be someone he knew. Slowly, Mike creaked open the bedroom door and called out, "Hello?" There was no reply, only the sounds of echoed retching and heavy breathing. Unsure of what to expect, still unsure of who was in his home, Mike prepared himself for whatever would come next. Cautiously, Mike creaked open the door to peer into the hallway. The bathroom light was on, and someone was definitely in there. At first, Mike wondered if a stranger just really needed to use the bathroom, but unless he had forgotten to lock the front door, it would have to be one of the 3 people who had a key. Mike had thought of the first person to come to mind who would be bold enough to invade his bathroom the way that they had. Dill Pickle. And as if saying the pet name willed him into existence, there he was. Mike's boyfriend Dylan, on his knees hovering around a toilet as if it had secret knowledge to give him. "Hey." Dylan could only muster up those words, and in a soft tone as his energy was spent on spilling his guts. "What's going on?" Mike had knelt down near Dylan and rubbed his back for comfort, but it didn't seem to do much for the sick man. He must just gotten off work. He was still clad in his paramedic uniform. "I think I'll need a stronger dose." Dylan spoke as if Mike knew what he was talking about, but Mike didn't know that vomiting was a normal occurrence in his lover's life. "Dose of what? Do you need me to run to Rite Aid?" Mike continued rubbing Dylan's back. "No, I have to talk to my doctor again. My stomach ulcers seem like they're getting worse. I used to have them when I was young, but they weren't like this." Mike finally had a chance to speak after being forced to pray to the porcelain gods for the past few minutes. "You don't think work stress is causing it?" Mike was finally able to look into Dylan's eyes and only see shame as if he had failed himself. "I'll be fine. I just have a few more shifts this week, and I'll get my day off." Dylan tried to assure Mike that he was okay, but Mike wasn't buying it. The man's eyes were heavy, and the fatigue that Dylan was feeling was palpable in the air. "Dill, you can't keep on going like this. There's no reason to." Mike tried his best to console Dylan, but the man nudged him away and went back to puking into the toilet. Once Dylan was finished, he took a breath and spoke as if he just ran a sprint. "I won't get better if I don't improve, and I don't want to mess up like that again." Mike had felt that the worst of his episode was over, so he allowed himself to sit on the floor with his back on the wall. "Mistakes happen, Dill, and that was literally your first day." Mike went to grab him a towel. The night after Dylan's first day was still fresh in his mind. It was the first time since being together that he had seen the rock in his life shed tears. But against the crashing waves of the sea, all rocks can crack and erode against its strength. "Mistakes happen?" Dylan shook his head. "That guy died because of my mistakes. And on top of that, I almost killed Mia." Mike had remembered talking to Dylan's coworker Mia on more than one occasion about how self-critical Dylan could be while at work, and Mike had done all he could to try and ease his mind when mistakes like that happen. But when someone's life is on the line, it's hard to dismiss the value of mistakes. Every second mattered when it was someone's life was in your hands, and mistakes shorten that time. "And when's the last time you took a risk like that when you're driving?" Dylan was quiet for a moment before looking back at Mike and shaking his head. "That's right, you don't do that shit anymore. And in a funny way, because that guy died, he ended up saving just as many people as you have." Dylan just shook his head. "But how long will it be before my ulcers makes me fuck up? If they find out how bad it gets, they'll think I'm too weak to work, and they me." And like a surge of inspiration, Dylan went from sitting to back on his knees, over the toilet, dry heaving, and in pain. "You need water, Dill." Mike darted quickly into the kitchen and came back with a cup of water. Mike set it beside Dylan while he finished leaning on the toilet bowl and took a sip afterward. "I'll be better after this week, I swear." Dylan tried to reassure him, but Mike only shook his head. "You'll never be content this way. There's nothing you can do about it now except learn from it." Dylan's vomiting had finally subsided enough to where he could think about what Mike was saying to him. He took a sip of the water Mike had brought and spoke. "People need me, and I just can't let them down. And I need you too, but for different reasons. I just want you to be okay and get home safe and healthy. You aren't weak or less of a man because you need the day off sometimes. Your body is telling you to take it easy, and you're ignoring it." The two were silent for a while, partially to wait out and see if Dylan's stomach had anything else left to say, and partially for Dylan to contemplate his lover's words. Finally, Dylan spoke. "Sorry for barging in and ruining your night, Mikey." Dylan's eyes held dark circles over them, but Mike just scoffed at his apology. "One of the best people in my life came over, had a deep chat with me, and will cuddle me tonight. I'm actually kinda happy you got sick." The two men chuckled and a wave of ease fell over the both of them. Dylan was still a bit weak, but luckily Mike had some medicine hidden away that would settle his stomach down for the night. And after a while the night found its peace once more, and Dylan with Mike's help was ushered to bed with a bucket in his free hand just in case.